good morning or good afternoon. I'm about to welcome Rob Feigenbaum, founder of Prevail Legal. Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Rob, we've lost your camera. There you are.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hey, how are you?
Excellent, excellent.
We won't allude to the last minute technical hitches behind the scene. Everything's been going seamlessly, obviously. I didn't just connect. Thank you so much for joining me. So welcome everyone to Latera TV on Friday, the 11th of September. How is it even that late in the year? I'm here, as I said, with Rob, founder of Prevail Legal, co-founder of Prevail Legal, which is a digital testimony management platform, providing real-time remote deposition transcription. Rob, thanks so much for joining me. I think so. We're going to talk a little bit about you and Prevail, and then we're going to talk about a few trends within e-discovery, which so I'm really looking forward to our chat. And we've only got half an hour. If I can just introduce you properly. Many of you, if you're listening, if you're within the ED world, will be more than familiar with Rob, who is a leading figure within the e-discovery world. You sold your e-discovery business CLT Ventures to FTI Consulting in 2010. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, and then joined Nuix as regional vice president same year, when you were responsible for business development in the western region of North America. And then you spent some time briefly at Consilio and Disco before working at vTestify as VP of Sales. And then that brings us up to the current chapter, which is when you launched Prevail. You founded it 2019, but officially launched it only in August.
Yes, we're extremely excited about the rollout.
Yeah, tell me first before we. So I'm familiar with all of your previous. We're going to talk mostly about Prevail, but just I'm not familiar with vTestify, and I know it's a similar sort of sector, isn't it? So just tell us a little bit more about that before we move on to Prevail, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I've been in, as you mentioned, after practicing law for about 5 years in California and New York, I ended up migrating over to the e-discovery industry when it was really in its nascent stages. And it spent 15 to 20 years there as a senior executive, and then was recruited to join vTestify to run sales, marketing, business development. And honestly, at that time, I knew practically nothing about court reporting other than having been an attorney taking depositions using court reporters. But it became pretty clear to me after just a little bit of research that it's one of the last remaining areas of the legal industry where technology has really not taken root yet, and where there hadn't been the same investment of capital and of mind share around how to digitize testimony. So I took the role to vTestify. I was there for about a year before realizing there were things that could be better accomplished if I started my own entity. Was very fortunate to recruit Randy Barris as my co-founder and CTO. And we spent the last about year and a half developing the product, and now we have it out on the market.
Yeah, and you said it right. So the legal industry's first cloud-based testimony management platform. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, it is cloud-based, but there are no server-based products that are true testimony management platforms.
Yeah, that was my question, whether we were sort of splitting it, but it is genuinely. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you'd have thought that there would be, wouldn't you? Because obviously, it surprises me. So I was previously a litigator, and I spent my own period of time sitting in court doing that painful exercise. So I'm feeling the pain. Okay, so tell us about Prevail then. So as I said, you launched in August, and put it simply, so it's speech to text technology. So you're using machine learning, AI-driven speech to text, capturing the live deposition. It's audio and video. But tell us more. I'm sure you can tell everyone much better than I can what it does and what it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's actually very good recap for someone who's just learning about the space. So it's really, the differentiator is there's a lot of products out there to do speech to text transcription, right? I mean, Dragon Speak's been around 25 years, and there's a ton of online products like Rev and others that do speech to text, right? For journalists, for education is a huge space, media, obviously, for closed captioning. So yes, AI transcription is part of what we do, but it's only a part, because our whole approach is that testimony, the end product has always just been the transcript. The actual transcript was the product. And you had all of these pieces that had to be integrated and used together and handoffs to create that product, that bound transcript. Well, our approach is that the testimony is the product. And if you digitize it and add the ability for attorneys, clients, interested third parties and observers to apply work product to that testimony throughout the entire process, while it's occurring, immediately after it occurs, even 2 years after it occurs, when that testimony might be relevant to unrelated matters that have come up, where that testimony, say of an expert witness, is highly relevant from a case that settled a year before. And so our platform makes all of that accessible, not only instantly, but also for as long as the client wants to maintain that data because of the long-term value of it. So the real approach is that testimony has always been about the transcript, and our thesis, which has been confirmed by clients across the spectrum, law firm, corporate, insurance, is that the testimony itself is the product, and that if organized properly, you can get so much extra value out of how you work with that testimony.
So tell me about, that's really interesting, and I'll come back to the looking at it 2 years later and the value there. But tell me about the real-time experience then. So I'm in court, obviously, and so I can tell me about sort of the time frame, because one of the issues is the real-time transcription, isn't it? That there's not that delay. So presumably you're much more able to, A, because it's real time, and B, because you've got it within this platform, which is easier to work and online, obviously. So is that right? So tell me how it works within the real time context.
Yeah, so that's a key value. So real time has been around for decades, but the only real time that's ever been available is by a stenographer. By a stenographer. Sure. By the court reporting stenographer. Yeah. Well, it's a little known fact that there's only maybe 8 or 9% of all stenographers are certified to do real time, which means they can record it fast enough and accurately enough to provide real time. Almost half of those in the United States work for district court judges, because every federal U.S. district court judge, and I forgot the number, I think it was 800, something around there, has a real-time stenographer in their courtroom. Right. So that takes half of the pool away from private litigants for depositions. So even if every attorney across the country wanted real-time in their depo with a stenographer, only 1 out of 20 can get it. Then you layer in, what does that cause? That causes a huge spike in price inflation, right? Very limited pool of people, higher demand, prices are extremely high for something that should not be a luxury item. So till today, real time in deposition, arbitration, any scenario was a luxury item that only litigants could pay for, that were big corporate, high value, high stakes litigation, where a client was willing to pay that extra cost. When the value of, as you mentioned, having access to that testimony, what happens is, I view as essential. So you had an essential capability that was only being offered to a very limited slice of parties. So we provide that with every deposition. And not only do we provide the real time, but we provide work product tools around it. The ability to create colored tags, to create bookmarks, to create instant video clips of the testimony and transcript synchronized with the audio and video. Yeah. So which normally was not available till the end of the entire transcript, right? Normally, I shouldn't say normally, anywhere but Prevail, if you take a deposition, you cannot create a video clip until the certified transcript is complete which is usually 2 weeks after the deposition. It is then has to be reviewed by the witness. The errata sheet has to be confirmed. Then it's synchronized with the video. Then it comes back to the attorneys, 5 to 6 weeks after the deposition. When you've already worked on 10 other motions, been in court, taken 15 other depots, and now you get back that video that you really wanted to clip from.
Yeah.
So to us, it's all integrated, right? Real time is integrated with work product, is integrated with video. And as of course we know, this is, if there was any doubt that we're a video driven society, that is, that myth has disappeared in the last year. Everyone gets video is the #1 form of evidence.
Yeah, and here we are talking on video.
And here we are talking on video.
Yeah, and there's no, you don't butt heads with any regulatory issues in doing that. You haven't, and there are no sort of bars or restrictions in terms of your ability to do that.
That's a really interesting question. So that's the very first thing we get asked. Is we love it. Okay, what courts can I use this in? What courts can't I? Are there local rules in jurisdictions that might say it's not allowed? And then, how do I know which one those are? And it really is, the landscape is complex at some level, but at another, it's pretty simple. Federal court in the United States, by rule 30, which governs depositions, you can take a deposition by audio, video, or stenographic means. And as long as you provide proper notice, which typically is, I think, 14 days, that you're going to take it by audio and visual means, the defending party can procure their own stenographer at their cost, but they cannot stop you from taking it by audio and video means as your sole form. So federal court, anywhere in the country, we are 100%, transcript will 100% be admitted into court and is within the court rules. You then have state court rules, and they fall mostly into 2 buckets. The state courts that follow the federal rule. So of the major states in terms of volume of cases, New York, Illinois, North Carolina, Texas, right? So 4 very, very large states all allow for digital recording, audio, video recording, as long as you provide notice, no requirement for a stenographer. Florida and California require the parties to agree. So you do need your adversary's consent to record by audio and video. Although Florida, interestingly, despite having that requirement, is the highest volume of digital court reporting in the country, because the court reporting shortage is extremely acute there. And per person, there's a higher number of lawsuits filed, mainly because personal injury laws there are pretty favorable to plaintiffs. So there's a very, very high volume of cases. So as a matter of course, the attorneys, agreed to take it electronically because the cost savings for both sides is so significant. And then California is the other one. The parties must agree, but California has a provision that you can record it by audio and video without the other side's consent and a stipulation, as long as if you make a final certified transcript, it is certified by a court reporter. So we have, pools of court reporters that if someone requests a transcript, we can certify it, even though the court reporter is not required to record it. They must just simply certify from our recording that it's a true and accurate copy. So it's, all in all, either by rule or trend, it's accepted across the country.
And is it where you have to agree? So just those 2 states. Is it would you be instructed by one party? Am I right? Rather than, or would both? Forgive me again if this is a stupid question, but so would there be a reason, an incentive to refuse to allow it? I.e., it would give the party that's instructing you or using you a competitive advantage. So therefore, they might say, actually, no, we don't give approval. Or is that not likely to arise?
Yeah, because we give, great question. So both sides have access to our platform.
Okay,
so
it's a mutual thing. It's not like one side can use it against the other in terms, and they wouldn't both be afforded, right?
Now, Now they have to, of course, just like in traditional court reporting, they have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So the opposing party has to pay, what's referred to in the rules always as a reasonable fee
Yeah.
for the video, audio, if they would like it after the deposition, and the transcript.
Yeah.
And same thing with the work product. So if they create bookmarks and tags during the deposition, to access those after, they have to pay, their, the fee associated with that.
But I'm guessing because it's still early days, isn't it? So I suppose you're going to still be, I guess you're going to be finding out how they react, aren't you? Like in terms of strategically, how they respond, right? Like I guess you're going to,
Yep.
this is all sort of to come.
Yeah. It's, I mean, at the end of the day, no party wants to spend more money than they have to.
Yeah.
And especially when it's on ancillary fees, right?
Yeah.
So while, I guess the simplest way to explain why adoption has become so much more favorable is, of course, that we're now remote for everything.
Yes.
And so the barriers to using technology for things that, people in the past said, no, I'd rather just show up and have a stenographer. What's really interesting is that the attorneys who are taking to it the fastest are the ones you would expect the least, which is the more senior partners, who you think would be like, nah, I'm not interested. I'll just wait till this goes away and then do it in person. They're the ones who are like, okay, I get this, this makes all the sense in the world. I just never knew this was acceptable. And they're like, I wouldn't have known unless I had to start researching it, that this is an acceptable form of taking testimony, because those bills I'd send to my clients, I would choke on them, right? I felt like I can't send this to my client because they're going to ask, why did that cost $5,000 for 1 day of arbitration testimony? What are you getting for that money? A transcript. That's it. Like words on paper. Like, how is that $5,000 and a video that looks crappy, because most video taken out there in depots is not very good.
Yeah.
So, they were at the front of the line, right? Like, hey, we get it. We know, how this helps. And, again, it wouldn't have happened without this transition to remote and being more innovative about getting your work done. But it's not going to go back, right? We all know that. Once you start the new thing, you don't go back to the old.
And I've heard interestingly, so I've had a very, very similar thing in terms of adoption, particularly among trial lawyers, that the senior trial lawyers, for a number of firms I've been speaking to, have adopted Zoom, for example. And obviously in Florida particularly, they've had Zoom hearings. And it's often the senior partners who have appeared to be the least tech savvy who have been adopting Zoom, and and it's
Absolutely.
It's fascinating. That's really interesting. And then in terms of the non-real-time element of using the platform, so you can keep revisiting. So that's where the analytics side presumably comes in. Is that right? So are you starting to sort of draw further intelligence and trends from testimony? Is that already
so
something you're looking at?
What our CTO refers to as deep search. So
Yeah.
the ability to to draw intelligence out of the data, to get more value out of it. And as our content library builds for clients, you obviously get more and more value from it.
Yeah,
so
thinking getting it such early days, we're forward looking, aren't we? So yeah, but when they do eventually build up enough data, you'll be able to.
And a key area, for example, is expert witnesses.
Yeah.
So experts are essential, as as having been a litigator in certain types of matters, you can't prove your case without an expert, right?
Yeah.
Construction defect, medical malpractice, attorney malpractice, on and on and on. You need an expert who can prove that, that the standard of care was not met. So the case, frequently turns on the expert. Like, that's it. Whoever's expert is more believable wins a lot of the time, right? So a huge value prevail to larger institutional clients, and law firms is previous expert testimony is incredibly valuable because it's impeachment testimony, right? And on the flip side, it's valuable because you don't want to retain an expert for your client and then find out 3 months later he said things in the past that are going to undermine what he's testifying for your client about. And currently there is no way other than someone having kept their own repository that they've managed of previous testimony. And even then, it's typically only the transcript, not the video, not synchronized, no, no work product attached to it. So Prevail, that ability when an expert's named in a matter that, who's adversarial to you, to go in and find the 5 other times that person's testified and you've deposed them, and it's about a similar issue, and you can search and find those similarities to what you expect them to testify about now or just testified about, and you're building your impeachment evidence for trial or for settlement, is immensely valuable.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. So have you, so it's very early, so I wish you all the best with it. And I guess it's a difficult time, to be launching a new business, but at the same time, because of the point that you made about everybody becoming more digital, I guess actually in some ways it's a good time, right? Like, I guess people are much more open-minded about this kind of stuff. It's very nerve-wracking time to be launching a new business, but it's also a very great time in terms of people's mindset is changing.
Well, yeah, and because the justice system moves on, right?
Yeah.
There's a backlog of work that got postponed when the courts were closed. There's an enormous amount of pandemic-related litigation being filed over insurance coverage, over employment issues, all just across the board. And then obviously the surge in bankruptcies and big JCPenney, et cetera, retailers and others. So there's this massive wave of litigation that's starting and will just continue. And you need to take testimony, you need to conduct arbitrations. That's a big area of demand for us, is arbitration, mediation, et cetera. So it turned out to be a good time, not of course that we knew it was coming, and we wish it hadn't happened. But now that it's here, it's ushered in this, as you said, like this open-mindedness to, I need to get my work done. And cases can't move forward without depositions. You can't file for summary judgment. You can't, they're an essential part of moving cases along.
So we've got now about 6 minutes to rattle through some major trends.
Plenty of time.
So we're going to talk. Actually, I'm not going to identify what they are in advance because we may not have time. But we talked in advance about some of the key trends that are happening within the e-discovery world. Some of them, one of the first is very relevant to what you were just talking about because it's COVID related. So we've talked about one of the big trends is e-discovery going, whereas you would conduct discovery perhaps in a physical location, in a very secure environment. Sometimes the room would be cleaned, in terms of making sure that it was all secure. You'd even have a security guard, and in these cases. But now a lot of it's being done remotely, right? This is an observation that you've made to me. So tell me what you're seeing about that. I mean, is that something that's happening seamlessly? Is it causing issues? What are you seeing?
Well, remote collection, forensic collection has been available for years. It's of course now become far more essential because you can't physically be showing up imaging hard drives and people's laptops, et cetera. So remote collection has obviously become so much more important, and using vendors that have that capability and software products that are able to do remote collection, has become, extremely key within the space. The other part you have is review, right? The other part of e-discovery being remote is doing review remote. And the mindset there was always big buildings filled with contract lawyers. Right?
Sorry, that's really the bit I was envisaging, the bit where people actually normally would go in, but now they're having to do it online. Yeah,
originally, a few years ago, it was like, I want them all in one location, take their cell phone when they come in the door, they're in pods, they've got manager, that concept. Remote, I don't want them working from home. How do I know what they're doing? And guess what's happened? It's all remote now. And so providers who early on, saw the value of remote review, companies like Haystack, for instance, which their model was remote attorneys. We can get the best attorneys because they don't have to worry about getting to some building somewhere, for the review. They work from home and you can get people better suited for each matter. And we can do QA and QC remote. And now everybody is like, we got to figure out how to be remote, right? Because
Yeah.
their lifeblood is doing doc review. If you're a discovery vendor, it's hosting, process review, and host and review. So, and clients have had to adapt because, like it or not, there is no other option right now.
And actually, it opens up talent, doesn't it? In terms of so I've seen this. I've had more conversations about this within the transactional space than within litigation. But one of the they've had similar challenges, parallel challenges. One of the observations that they've made is that it opens up a pool of talent. That whereas previously talent would be very much what's available within a location. Once you've got the security, obviously there are significant security challenges which people are rising to because they have to. But it's interesting how the pool of talent is being opened up. Yeah,
absolutely. And especially for specific needs. If you need someone for a biotech patent case who has a background in, in organic chem and biology, well, there's only so many of them that are going to live near one of your doc review centers.
Yeah.
But if you open it up nationwide, you have a lot more likelihood of finding the right people.
So tell me, one of the other things, and we haven't got on to discuss this, we're going to have a debate about AI, the lack of AI revolution. So there's obviously, within e-discovery, AI has been used for a long time. And I think some companies really jump out as sort of, just sort of applying it and moving the bar. But you argue, and I'm just going to hand over to you for this. You argue that there's been, and I'm kind of with you, that there's not really been the AI revolution that we're anticipating.
No, it's not a revolution. I think it's interesting because I haven't done it, but I think if a good research project for for someone in law school is really focused on legal technology is, this number of stories about AI, I think, is less than it was 3 years ago. Because, yourself and other members, who cover the legal technology space, it's like we've talked about it. Where is it, right? I think there are places where it's helping, and where it is adding new value, but I don't think it's what people expected. Like, for instance, do not pay, right? It's a bot in the US to pay, help you fight traffic tickets. You enter your information and it basically helps, an automated system to help you file, you're contesting a traffic ticket. I think the biggest areas probably had impact is legal spend management. So not even on the practice of law, but on helping clients figure out where they're spending their money.
But within ED specifically, so would you count that? I think that seems relatively mainstream. So what about things like, so when I was thinking about this in advance, about the things that I am always quite impressed with. So what's really interesting, we're going to run out of time really, but so I think, so Recomind's been using AI for years, obviously now part of Open Text. So they've got decisive search, which, and I'm, so with the search space is like, I was thinking about whether we've seen any great leaps. We can talk about predictive coding, technology assisted review, obviously, but I don't see, I mean, obviously you've been able to use those TAR for a long time, but I'm not sure I see any massive uptake. Is that wrong? Am I missing something?
No, I think TAR is used pretty much across the industry.
Okay.
But what I would say though is that's, in a lot of ways, that's not AI, because that's just simply applying search algorithms that have been around forever and training document sets. Yeah. Whereas AI is literally the computer thinking for itself, right? Yeah. I mean, and I think that's where. And
I was going to come on to say, so what would you identify if you had to say one, this was one for Christian, so is it AI? It's not AI. So I'm contradicting myself. So what would you say, the one development where you would say actually there has been some progress, if we were playing devil's advocate with ourselves?
I think legal spend management has been an area.
Okay, fine. Sorry.
Because there's been a lot of investment there. A lot of clients obviously want to make sure they are paying, understand where their money is going. So it's an application where AI has been very useful. So for instance, and a bill gets submitted for a certain number of hours, on a matter for, let's take depositions, right? The attorney bills 3 hours for a depo. Then the system being able to then go across and analyze every other thing that related to that event to see how that compares to what should have been billed, A, compared to how much was spent in other matters, but B, are there other costs related to that depot it can compare it with to make sure that that amount of time makes sense? So, the ability to do, cross data analysis without a person directing the software to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that ability for the platform to think for itself of, presenting to you different ways to look at that spend and evaluate it, as opposed to an analyst having to do that work.
Yeah.
I think that's somewhere where AI has started to have a big impact, and be able to, provide that true automated, intelligence to, to show you things you wouldn't have found, likely would not have found on your own.
So we've run out of time. I really enjoyed it. I think that you're going to chat me off. So it would be great to revisit some of those last points, because we didn't really have much of a chance to do a deep dive.
Yeah.
Some kind of like online panel at some point to really look at the kind
Absolutely.
of pros and cons of where there's progress and where there's not. I think that would make for a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
Rob, it's been great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Take care.